Tonight, this man steps forward for an exclusive interview in which he says he was raped by an IRA man and then subjected to an IRA investigation.
You miserably sit in front of a judge and jury, but it's worse because of who you're dealing with.
Fresh claims of a kangaroo court where the IRA were also the willing executioner.
We were given 3 options on what to do with this guy. First one was for them to deal with. Put a bullet in the back of his head.
Maria Cahill's account of an IRA investigation into her abuse allegations has been consistently denied by Sinn Féin. But now this man tells a similar story.
The cover-up was from top to bottom on both sides of the political wing and the IRA.
Tonight on Spotlight, Sinn Féin, the IRA, and their alleged involvement in a 2002 investigation into sexual abuse allegations that saw an IRA man later expelled to England. We asked Sinn Féin, did they tell the police? And if so, when? It's almost 5 months since Maria Cahill waived her right to anonymity to tell how the Republican movement responded to her allegations of sexual abuse by a member of the IRA.
She spoke of the trauma she had experienced since and the devastating effect it has had on her life.
Her account of a secret IRA investigation, kangaroo court, and being brought face to face with her alleged abuser caused shockwaves for Sinn Féin on both sides of the border. In going public, Maria Cahill came under intense scrutiny.
I don't regret for 1 second waiving my anonymity or doing the programme. I did feel lighter as a result of doing it.
Maria's journey recently led to the Labour Party's national conference in Killarney, where she received an award.
For her determination, for her courage, Maria Cahill.
The last few months have been deeply traumatic for me. I was subject to some of the most vile abuse imaginable. I will not be silenced because it is politically inconvenient for some.
A warm reaction from some contrasts with a barrage of sustained online criticism, much of it anonymous.
It caused great distress and upset and worry. And I'm not about to do what that is intended to do, because essentially it is intended to silence me, to frighten me, to get me to shut up and go away.
She has had her honesty questioned and endured ferocious personal attacks.
Do you think that
her previous brief association with a dissident Republican political group, as well as her articles about Sinn Féin, have prompted some to accuse her of trying to undermine the party?
Maria, did you set out to try and damage Sinn Féin?
No, I set out to tell my experience. Sinn Féin damaged themselves over the way in which they responded to it.
Some of that response played out in the chambers of the Irish Parliament. As Gerry Adams made a speech, Maria Cahill watched from the visitors' gallery.
I was completely exhausted, traumatised. Gerry Adams came in, when he wasn't writing notes, he was laughing and joking to the person next to him. His speech on the day for me was horrendous to have to listen to. He defended the people who caused me great hurt at the time.
The Republicans who played any part in speaking to Maria Cahill, including myself, state with conviction that our concern was for her welfare. These are all decent people. They have been smeared in a despicable way.
At that point, I think I had just lost any sense of respect that I probably ever had for him, and I did have respect for him when I was growing up.
In his speech, the Sinn Féin president rejected claims that his party was involved in a cover-up of sexual abuse.
and to go to the IUC. Sinn Féin have not been involved, it's a charge that's levelled against us, in any cover-up of abuse. Sinn Féin has sought to help and to provide advice to those who are at risk and to urge anyone with information to bring it forward.
But less than 50 miles away, someone else was also watching the debate, and his reaction to what he was hearing was one of outrage.
I was mad, very explosive mad, as one would say. To say, for Gerry Adams to get up and say that they had no knowledge of people being moved from country to country. The cover-up was from top to bottom on both sides of the political wing and the IRA.
This is Pody McGann. He says he too was abused by an IRA man when he was a teenager. He says that abuse was investigated and then covered up by the IRA and Sinn Féin working together. Tonight he is telling his story on camera for the first time. He says he is coming forward now because he watched Maria Cahill take the same decision to speak out.
Personally, she gave me the strength. Watching her being interviewed and the hardship that she went through was so similar. I just thought she'd have to give me the strength to stand up and be counted.
Crime journalist Paul Williams first met Pody McGann in 2009 and documented his story.
I've known Pody now for 6 years. Is that he himself, when I took these notes and I interviewed him, he wanted me to take his account of what happened to him. I phoned him first and I went to see him. And instantly I found that he was very credible, a very credible witness. He has never changed a syllable of his story.
Spotlight has seen evidence showing that Pody McGann has been telling the same story for years. That story begins with a childhood spent growing up in a strongly Republican household in County Louth in the 1980s.
We grew up as Republicans. Obviously, we grew up at the thick of some of the thickest troubles going on down the north. We believed this was the way forward, that someday we'll eventually get the 6 counties back. So it was a good thing in a way, going to meetings, selling papers, helping out, doing your bit down along the border, opening roads that was closed.
Pody grew up in a house which, according to him, had a regular stream of guests. But they were unusual visitors. Often they were active IRA members using his family home as a safe house.
Basically, the house would be only a stepping stone to another house and then maybe to a journey across the water on a mission. It all depends on the length of stay or the position in the IRA that the volunteer had. If he was a new recruit, he'd stay longer. If he was a fully fledged IRA volunteer, it could be a couple of days, it could be a week. You know, you could be gone to work and come home and the man would be gone, you know, but short-termers would have to stay in their room. Their food would be brought to them, be left outside the door and just knock on the door.
Pody says he made friends with some of the IRA men, including Frankie Ryan.
I became mates with him. He was like an older brother to me. A couple of weeks after he left the house, the news came on and it was about an explosion.
This is the point where the bomb went off.
About 2 IRA volunteers that were blown up.
The IRA say they were Frankie Ryan and Patricia Black.
Then their pictures were shown and I couldn't believe It hurt at the time because I got on so well with him.
By now, Pody was well into his teens. Not long after Frankie Ryan's death, he too was asked to join the IRA.
I basically said, not a chance. I said, yeah, I ain't going over. I'd have to spend years in jail or to be blown to bits. I'm not taking that chance. You know, I continued to go to rallies and this, that and the other. And, but joining up was never part of it. Never part of it. I never signed up for that.
The IRA continued to send a steady stream of men to the house. Some would stay for days, some weeks. In the early 1990s, an IRA man from Belfast showed up. Pody was by now 17. The IRA man, from a well-known Republican family, was a few years older.
Nice chap, a couple of years older than me at the time. Got to know him as again was due to stay for a long period of time. He became friendly with the family, friendly with us all, and as far as the rest of the family was concerned, he was a nice lad.
One night, Pody's family and the IRA man sat around telling ghost stories.
When volunteers would stay, because we lived in such a large house, we would tell ghost stories. It was part of the crack. That's the way it was growing up, telling ghost stories. So this particular gentleman had his own room, same as all stayovers had, volunteers. One particular morning we were down having breakfast and the volunteer came down and he says, something weird happened in that room last night. The bed started floating. And we thought, you're messing. Very convincing story. But like, it was an old house, like, we weren't going to say no, you know. So he approached me and he says, all right if I stay in your room? And I said, no bother. It didn't bother me because I was coming and going anyway. But after a few nights, I awoke to the feel of a hand feeling me up. If that's the right word to use, I don't know. But I turned over on my belly. I thought the man was asleep and whatever. So I turned over and I got up and I went to work the next morning. And I thought nothing of it. But when I came home from work that evening, he didn't look at me and I didn't look at him. But a few nights later, I was awoken to my head being pushed into the pillow. And I was in extreme pain and realised that this particular gentleman was abusing me. I was 17 and he penetrated me to an extent that it was painful, and then you knew it was 100% wrong. I got out of the bed, pulled myself away, and I went to walk around the bed when he got out of the bed, and he stopped me, and I says, let me out. And he says, listen to me, if you ever open your mouth about this to anybody, you'll be found on the border roads.
Pody says he was under no illusions about the threat to his life.
Many's a person asked me, why didn't you go to the doctor? Why didn't you go to this? This isn't stuff that you walk into a doctor and say, your man raped me last night. What can we do about it? Report it to the guards. How can you report it to the guards when you're after being threatened? Keep your mouth shut. So I hid it all. I hid it all.
Pody left home the very next day, never to live there again. The IRA man stayed on.
I moved out of home straight away, stayed with family, friends, whatever it may be, never telling them anything. Just kept it to myself. But never went back to that house as long as he was still there, which went on for weeks afterwards. And even a comment at work one day with me father, Your mother wants to know why aren't you calling in. And I says, tell Mammy I'll be up soon. There's a few pounds, we'll give her a couple of pounds, you know. So I was more so trying to protect myself and my mother and the rest of the family as such.
Pody says that for years he told no one about what had happened. But in 2002, he was speaking to another man when the subject of the same IRA man came up.
He says to me, see, he's back in town. And we just went through a general chit-chat, and I says, why do you hate him? And he says, well, he done this and he done that and he done the other. And I says, well, that happened to me too.
The other person said that he was considerably younger than Pody when he was allegedly abused. Within hours, Pody says a local Sinn Féin representative was informed. Pody was asked to bring the other alleged victim with him to a meeting which was to be held back at the family home, which Pody had moved out of years before.
We weren't told what or what it was about, but we went up with our respective partners at the time because we didn't know what we were going into. We were met at the front door by two unnamed men. There was more in the hall. The two women were escorted down into the kitchen. So we were told to go up the stairs into a certain room. Men standing at the door in the hall, at the top of the stairs at the end bedroom. It's like, if you remember over the years, IRA funerals and volunteers standing alongside the coffin, arms behind their back, head up, stood to attention.
Pody says he and the other man were directed into the very same room where years earlier Pody says he was raped.
It was ironic at the time that the room where the abuse took place on myself was the exact same room where they had cleared out and set up a table, 3 chairs and other chairs scattered around. So not only was it hard going to a meeting, it was hard going back into that room.
Pody says that at the first meeting, one man immediately took control.
When we walked in, he shook hands and he introduced himself. How are you doing? I'm Porrick. He basically said, I am the General Quartermaster. We heard your story, we're taking this very serious, but we want to know what happened. You're sitting there in a room with X amount of volunteers and the top man himself, as was explained to us. I'm as high as it goes, he says.
What was their manner like during that interrogation?
Their manner is dominant. It's a mixture of hostile and dominant. They're there to interview you on what happened. You may as well sit in front of a judge and jury. Individually, we explained what happened, and it was explained it'll be back onto us in a couple of weeks, and they shook hands and said, we're very sorry about what happened, but we'll be dealing with this. Don't be talking to anybody else now. Trust us when we tell you, we'll deal with this. It was a roundabout way of saying, don't go to the guards.
Did you want to go to the guards?
I wanted to go, yes. When you have so much fear running through your veins from what happened and the threat that was put to you in that bedroom that night, and then you're sitting there and you're in a situation you can't control anyway. So speaking to the guards was never an option.
2 weeks later, Pody says he got another call. He and the other alleged victim were asked to go back for a second meeting with Podrick and his colleagues.
Same place, the whole lot. So up into the same room, same guy in the middle.
The man who man who previously introduced himself
as Porrick, yes. He was sitting there, There was one difference. There was a woman sitting to the left. She never spoke. The only man that really spoke at the meeting was Pádraig. We have him, says him. I says, what do you mean? We have him in custody. We have other comrades standing over him at the minute. He's in custody and he's not going anywhere until we've dealt with him. But by the way, he has admitted to doing what he did, plus other people. We were given 3 options on what to do with this guy. The first one was for them to deal with, put a bullet in the back of his head. It was said with such ease, you knew that it wouldn't be a problem. The second one was we were given a choice to put us into a room with just him and whatever implementation we wanted to deal with the situation. Basically, kill him if you want to kill him. You were offered whatever you needed to do the job, so like you got to look into terms of what that's been. Is it a gun? Is it a baseball bat? Is it whatever? The third one was to expel him out of the country. We said, will you give us a bit of time to think about it? So we went out into the hall and discussed it. It sounds so simple when you're sitting in a room and a fella says, we'll just put a bullet in the back of his head, you know? But then you have to live with the gravity of that situation. So the second option, putting us into a room with him, that could end in murder too. Whether they do it or we do it. A murder is a murder. So we went for option 3. We went for just get him out of the country.
During that second meeting, did the person who had identified himself as Pádraig offer you any type of assistance?
The option was given to us of a psychiatrist, and she was sitting in the room with us.
So the woman in the room was introduced to you as the IRA psychiatrist?
Psychiatrist. Like, there's absolutely no point in... If I, which I did in the end anyway, needed a psychiatrist, I'd go through my own means to get it. What was the point in us sitting down with an IRA psychiatrist and telling her how you felt? That was for us to discuss privately with our own psychiatrist, not theirs.
From the outside looking in, you were sitting in front of the judge, jury and
an executioner. Going by his reaction and his facial expression, he was genuinely shocked that he wasn't going to get to do this. You know, because they just wanted to get this swept under the carpet and move on.
Pody says the Sinn Féin party representative told him several months later that the alleged perpetrator had been exiled to England.
I was led to believe England, he's across the water now, he'll be all right.
Pody's account of what happened to his alleged abuser has been corroborated to us by a number of Republican sources. These sources told Spotlight that the IRA man alleged to have abused Pody and others was exiled to England following an IRA investigation. Sometime after that IRA investigation, Pody says he realised who it was that he had met. It was several years after the alleged IRA investigation that Pody picked up a newspaper. He says he immediately recognised a picture of this man. He says it was the same Pádraig who interrogated him about the abuse claims in 2002. I'm going to show you a photograph now. Do you know who this person is?
Yeah. That's the man that conducted the interview. The so-called head of the Belfast Brigade. That guy is Pádraig Wilson. And he dealt with the investigation from start to finish.
Pádraig Wilson, seen here in 1988, strenuously denies Pody McGann's version of events. He says he does not know Pody McGann and has never met him. But if it were him, it would be significant because Padraig Wilson is a senior Republican leader and a key ally of Gerry Adams. Sentenced to 24 years for a car bombing offence in 1991, Padraig Wilson went on to become the IRA commander in the Maze prison. The British government believed he was an important champion of the peace process inside the IRA, and when temporarily freed from jail was able to attend Republican meetings.
Padraig Wilson is welcome.
He was finally released in 1999 under the Good Friday Agreement and went on to become Sinn Féin's Director of International Affairs for a time.
This isn't the first time Padraig Wilson has been accused of representing the IRA in cases which could embarrass the organisation. In fact, it's not even the second time. This is the third major case in which his name has been brought up by someone who says they were present when he was allegedly acting as a representative of the IRA.
Last year, Maria Cahill told Spotlight that after her alleged abuser fled Belfast, Padraig Wilson met her along with her father on behalf of the IRA leadership.
Pody McGann came down to try and smooth the waters over with my father, and I was saying to him, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for you to become involved. I didn't want to tell anybody about this.
After Maria Cahill reported her allegations, Padraig Wilson, along with 3 others, was charged with arranging IRA meetings. Maria Cahill later withdrew her evidence over what she perceived as failings in the criminal justice system, and the case against Wilson and his co-accused collapsed. This summer, Padraig Wilson is due to stand trial on charges relating to alleged IRA membership and activity connected to the aftermath of the murder of Robert McCartney in 2005. Sinn Féin's Gerry Kelly has previously described the charges as bogus and politically motivated. We wrote to Padraig Wilson to ask him about his alleged involvement in Pody's case. He told Spotlight that he refutes entirely the allegations we put to him. He declined to be interviewed for this programme, stating he has no confidence that Spotlight's programme would be fair, and claiming that in reporting the Maria Cahill case, Spotlight had omitted relevant material.
But there is, of course, another side to this story. Pody says that Padraig Wilson and his colleagues had been told of serious sexual abuse allegations against a man who had been in the IRA. And according to Pody, the IRA had exiled him to England. So we asked Padraig Wilson if he had informed the authorities that an alleged sex abuser had been moved on.
Padraig Wilson told Spotlight that he has never been arrested for, questioned about or charged with any offence arising from the allegations, and said he has offered to Gardaí via his solicitor to attend voluntarily for such questioning. He said that the allegations we put to him did not provide him with full and proper disclosure or all the material which was relevant to the reliability and credibility of those allegations. He said that Spotlight was showing a disregard for fairness and due process. Over the next few years, Pody tried to move on with his life. He got married and started a family of his own. But his secret was a heavy burden to bear. He says both he and the other alleged victim suffered psychologically. These are notes Pody says he made for an independent counselling session in 2008 in which he described the pain of what he'd been through. Then, as now, his story has been consistent. Pody says he stayed in intermittent contact with the original Sinn Féin representative who set up the initial meetings with the IRA. A man who, in 2004, became an elected county councillor in County Louth.
Who is the local Sinn Féin county councillor that you were referring to?
Pierce McGill.
This is Sinn Féin county councillor Pierce McGill. We sent him a detailed list of questions about his involvement in the case, including what he had reported to the authorities. In his reply, he declined to address that specific question. He told Spotlight that when he became aware of the allegations, he worked to support the victims, and he said that the victims decided at the time not to notify the Gardaí.
But Pearse McGeoch wasn't the only Sinn Féin elected representative who Pody says was aware of the abuse allegations. That's because Pody says in 2008 and early 2009, after asking for help, he was taken to see a more senior politician, a TD and a leading member of Sinn Féin's team in the Irish Parliament.
The local county TD at the time, and I got the phone call to say to go down at a certain time, and I did, and I walked in. When I walked in first, I was frisked anyway, you know, which is just the way excuse me, it's just the way that they work. Why would your local Sinn Féin TD in 2009 frisk you? Because that's the way they work. In situations like that, two victims with the knowledge they had could easily tape them.
Pody, who is the local TD in 2009?
Arthur Morgan.
Arthur Morgan has admitted that the meeting took place. He points out that afterwards he sent Pody McGann a letter urging him to report the allegations to the police. Spotlight has seen a copy of that letter. We asked Arthur Morgan if he had informed the Gardaí or any public authorities about the abuse allegations, but he did not answer at that point. Arthur Morgan stepped down from the Dáil in 2010. His seat was subsequently won by Gerry Adams.
According to Pody, Arthur Morgan not only knew about the alleged abuse he had suffered, but was able to tell him back in 2009 that his alleged abuser's exile was at an end and he was once again back in Ireland and walking the streets.
He turned around and he said, "Oh, by the way, your man's back in the country anyway. Just watch out." You know, not in a threatening manner, but it was just letting me know. I said, "And where is he?" He was only in a village 10 miles away.
That information, Pody says, was devastating.
I knew I had to do a job in that village a week later. I can't even leave the site, which was just off the street, to go and get 20 fags, we'll say, because I was afraid of bumping into this particular guy. And you have two things in the back of your head. Not only what, 2 or 3, like, was it the threat that he made to you on the night of the abuse? If he did meet you, he'd know who you are. And was he looking for revenge for what we had done, getting him expelled? You know, so there was a few things to... So to be honest, I had a bit of an emotional breakdown on the site.
We also asked Arthur Morgan about his apparent knowledge of the whereabouts in 2009 of the alleged abuser, but he told Spotlight that he had not been advised of the identity of the man. Gerry Adams has said that Sinn Féin has robust party guidelines on the issues of child protection and allegations of sexual abuse. We asked Sinn Féin if Pearse McGeoch, Arthur Morgan and Padraig Wilson had reported the allegations to the party, and if so, when. Sinn Féin told us at all times those concerned acted in the best interests of the victims of alleged abuse, consistent with party guidelines. Spotlight understands that the man alleged to have abused Pody and others, whose name is known to us, is now living in Ireland. However, his name and the allegations against him are also known to the Gardaí because Pody gave them a detailed statement after the Maria Cahill programme. An investigation is ongoing. But for Pody, that's not the only thing that needs to be investigated.
That's because the involvement of a Sinn Féin county councillor and a Sinn Féin TD points to a much wider issue. If these two men were intimately aware of the facts of what had happened to Pody as far back as 2002 in one case and 2008 in the other, how can it be credible that the Sinn Féin leadership did not know?
Like, at the end of the day, back when the the local county councillor was told about all this, do you think he's going to ring top brass IRA and not tell Gerry Adams?
On the Friday following the Maria Cahill programme, a Sinn Féin spokesperson told a Dublin radio station that Gerry Adams was not aware of any other cases of abuse. Just 2 days later, Gerry Adams said in a blog post that the IRA had shot alleged sex offenders or expelled them. And then, a month later, he told RTE that names of alleged Republican sex abusers had been posted anonymously through his letterbox in Belfast.
It came to me anonymously, and
by post or in the phone, by phone, or how?
It was left at my letterbox at home.
At home in Louth or in Belfast?
In Belfast.
Spotlight made contact with a Sinn Féin insider who spoke to us on the basis of anonymity. He told Spotlight that the Sinn Féin party did investigate abuse allegations. His words are spoken by an actor.
Allegations of abuse are dealt with carefully now, but past allegations of abuse are more likely to have been handled by the party locally. I know of a handful of cases about the city, but I suppose if you replicate that across the rest of the country, it might add up to many more than a handful.
The insider's account suggests that Gerry Adams and others at a senior party level may be aware of more than what they have admitted to knowing.
If there's a case about allegations of abuse anywhere, it goes up the line. Leaving aside the justice angle, all of these things have potential serious political repercussions. So the idea that it would not go up the line is not credible. It's not credible for leadership to say they didn't know of other cases. Anything significant and anything of any substance would be known by leadership people.
A separate Republican source told Spotlight that senior members of Sinn Féin, some of them household names, were involved in investigating allegations of abuse by Republicans. I've spoken to a number of alleged victims. All have reported the allegations to the police.
We asked Sinn Féin, were senior members of the party ever involved in investigating allegations of abuse by Republicans? They said Sinn Féin does not conduct any inquiries into allegations of abuse. That is the role of the police north and south. We asked for clarification on whether it had ever happened, but the party did not respond on that point. It's been reported in the Irish media that Gardaí are investigating 30 former IRA members alleged to have been involved in child abuse. The PSNI were not able to confirm to Spotlight whether they too are investigating similar cases. A few weeks after Maria Cahill spoke out, a Dáil debate focused on sexual abuse allegedly carried out by Republicans and how much responsibility Sinn Féin had as a party for what had happened.
It's clear that in the case of Maria Cahill, Sinn Féin and the IRA put the institution first. They covered up the abuse, moved the perpetrators around, so the untouchables would remain untouchable.
In his speech, Gerry Adams said he had no knowledge of claims that Republican sex offenders were moved on, and his deputy leader denied that Sinn Féin had conspired to shield child abusers.
Allegations have been made against Sinn Féin that we are party to a cover-up or conspiring to shield child abusers. This is not true, and the mere repetition of this slander will never take from the fact that it is not true.
Pody now says he won't rest until he's vindicated.
The reason they are trying to cover up this situation is because they, and rightly so, condemned the Catholic Church and its hierarchy for hiding it for so many years. So they can't look as hypocrites. They have to keep denying it and saying they don't. But the facts are there.
I can see the parallels with the early days when the first hints started to emerge that there were paedophiles in the Catholic Church. People saying, my God, that can't be true. I think, just like the Catholic Church, I don't think this is going to go away.
In telling her story, Maria Cahill lifted the lid on how the IRA responded to allegations of sex abuse made against its members.
I think the biggest reaction, which actually both upset me the most and relieved me the most, was the fact that people came forward, got help. Other people went forward to the Gardaí and made complaints. And I think that that was a huge thing for me, because that was part of the motivation for telling my own story. Other victims need to come forward, they need to get help.
Pody McGann says that what he wants now is for the Republican movement to acknowledge the truth of his story. For him, the time for secrecy is over.
There may be people watching this tonight who have secrets of their own in terms of alleged abuse from people connected or within the Republican movement. What would you say to those people?
I'll use the Republicans' own phrase. This is for the victims and the victims alone. I'll say to you, chuck our law, because our day will come and we will get justice.